Most time management advice was built for men and ignores the fact that women operate on a 28-day cycle for a large part of their lives, not a 24-hour one like men do. So in today's episode, I'm going to be covering cycle syncing and productivity and how to work with your hormones, not against them as a woman. And if you're a man watching, this would be really informational for you to know for the women in your life so that you can understand the 4 phases of a woman's cycle. So I'm going to be getting into why we haven't been taught how to manage our time around our cycle and why a lot of time management advice is built around just the clock, a 24-hour reset. Most of us have just been taught how to manage our time by just the 24 hours that we have day to day. And we haven't been taught how to get in line with our body's rhythm and sync it up so that we're more productive and peaceful and powerful, built on where we're at in our cycle. So I'm going to talk about how our menstrual cycle actually impacts our productivity as women and how it shifts our energy and our expectations and how we should manage our time differently based on where we're at in our cycle. And I'm also going to go into how it changes once we get into menopause as well, because that's something people do not talk about at all. And that's something I'm interested in knowing more about. So I'm going to be presenting that to you today. And I'm excited to get into it because I'm sure after learning this, you're going to learn why certain times of the month is more optimal for you to do certain things. And it's going to make it more simple and easier for you. And while there's different activities you should be doing at other parts of the month to just make sure you're aligning your energy with your productivity to the best of your ability, because I know it's not going to be 100%, but I want to give you these tips and tricks to basically help you hack your body and optimize yourself as a woman. Hi, hello. Welcome back to the Fire Inside podcast. I'm so happy you're here. This is the podcast for ambitious women like you who want to get it all they desire done without burning out. I'm your host, Sade Kelly, time management coach, wife, mom, hype woman for high achieving, ambitious women who want peace, freedom, and to live life on their own terms and live out their actual dream lives. This is your weekly reminder every time you tune into this podcast to stop playing small, start living fully, whether it's in your career, your business, your wellness, your relationships, your personal goals, all of the things, right? We cover the strategies, mindset shifts, on how to actually succeed in the way you like to, because it's really up to what you want, not what others think and what others want of you. In today's episode, I want to go through the 4 phases of a woman's cycle, starting off with the menstrual phase, which for some women is 3 days. For others, it's up to 7 days. And if you have a regular cycle, it may be even longer. So each part of our cycle has a season equivalent. This one is the winter season. So think this is when estrogen and progesterone drop to their lowest level. So what you'll notice is you're automatically going to be more tired because your estrogen levels are so low. You're going to notice that you're more lethargic. You're craving certain foods around this time. Your energy is a bit lower. You're probably going to need more sleep. You may be more inward facing and like more introspective and just maybe a bit more sensitive. Like all of that happens during the menstrual phase, our inner winter. So if this happens to you, this is completely normal. It's just based on your hormone levels, right? So how you may be feeling is just a bit more low energy, and the strengths you have during this time is a great time to reflect, to think about your vision, to journal, to have more quiet time to yourself, to be more self-aware and notice things. Maybe a good time to do some audits of things going on in your life. And some productivity tips around this cycle phase is to schedule lighter tasks, right? Maybe you want to do more solo tasks, more writing, more reviewing, more goal setting, more like just sitting down, doing a presentation, something a bit more quiet. Maybe this is not when you want to do your more extroverted tasks if you can help it. Maybe this is a great time to also reassess what's working, what's not in your systems and your habits. And then also when it comes to how you're moving your body, you may want to do less intense workouts. Now for me, I can still strength train. I may just like lower my weights, but I tend to still be able to strength train, but I probably will strength train and do a bit more walking than like intense cardio or HIIT or anything like that. Because it's a great time to have more rest, do more yoga, stretch your body. Nutrition wise, it's a really great time to really focus on like veggies and healthy fats like avocados and flax seeds and maybe warm liquids and soups and ginger tea. And maybe you want to avoid like fried foods and alcohol and things of that nature and just like excess salt, which doesn't help when you're already bloated and going through it a bit. But this is also a reminder to just basically, when you're in the menstrual phase, to slow things down a bit, recluse a bit. Think about what you do in the winter when things are cold, how you act, right? It's a bit of a hibernation period that you have every month. Give yourself the permission to basically slow down, restore, and not push yourself as much during this phase. And you'll realize that it really aligns with how productive and how much you can really give. This may be the time when you ask it for a bit more help from your partner or people around you for certain things that take a bit more energy and that are a bit more physical. And it's just a couple of days. It's about, for most women, 3 to 5 days. It's not very long, right? So give yourself the time. Second part of our cycle is the follicular phase. Now, this is the spring season. This is when estrogen begins to rise, your energy begins to rise, the follicular stimulating hormone, it's called FSH, is now being released, and you start to just feel more focused, more curious, like you're more clear, you're more motivated, you're more optimistic. It's literally like you went from being in the snow in the wilderness, and then now the flowers are blooming, things are getting brighter, like legit. If you start to really notice and mark in your cycle down, like I use the Natural Cycles app, which I love. I can leave a link to it in the description if you want to check it out. But the reason I love it is because it shows me where I'm at every day in my cycle. You take your temperature day to day. It's also a great form of birth control or a great way to get pregnant if that's something you're interested in. But I've used it for both. But I really like the Natural Cycles app because it shows you not just around ovulation time, but it shows you about your menstrual cycle, your follicular cycle, and the other cycles I'm going to talk through. But it gives you information on all of these things. So during your follicular phase, which is like your inner spring, this is a great time to start new projects, to learn new things, to brainstorm, do strategic planning. This is a great time to like work on upcoming tasks that take more energy, launches, working on systems, routines. Like this is when you're really creative. This is like when I like to like do a lot of content planning. I like to film during this time / my next phase that I'm going to go into. I also like to lean into like more future planning, more like deep work that requires more focus and energy. And maybe this is when I work a bit more longer hours. So I have like 2 weeks throughout the month where I may pick up and work a bit more hours than I do the other phases, which is the luteal and the menstrual phase for me. And I'm going to go into those phases in a second. I already went through the menstrual phase, but the luteal is the last part of this. And also during the follicular phase, you want to just focus on eating more fermented foods. So this is something I didn't do before, but I started doing. Like I may have more like sprouted greens, broccoli, asparagus, kimchi. Like these things actually help your body to process rising estrogen because it rises pretty quickly, I guess. So these foods help to like balance it out. Now, I'm not a nutrition, but this is things that I've learned and I've started implementing, and I've actually seen changes. So I'm sharing it, with you guys. But this is really AKA basically like your go time. This is like when you want to build momentum. This is your spring. This is when you want to capitalize on the energy that you are feeling. The third part is your highest part, the highest energy part of the month, which is the ovulation phase. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but for the follicular phase, this can be about 6 days or a week or a little over a week. Some women, I believe it's like up to like 10 days. It's kind of going to vary and you can track it to know how long yours is. But I know for me, days like 6 to like 12, 13-ish. It's kind of like when I am in the follicular phase, I start to feel my energy go up. And then ovulation phase is basically like this 5-day period, and it's usually like around days 13 through 17, but it really varies. You only have one day where you actually ovulate, but there's like a period of like about 5 days for most women, depending on your cycle. Of course, this is based on just like a normal 28 day to like 30, 32 day cycle, which is what the normal range for most women. But the ovulation phase is when you're most high energy. This is like your inner summer. So think about like, this is summer. This is like when you are like estrogen, testosterone is peaking. This is like why men have so much energy all the time, because they have so much testosterone, right? So this is when it's peaking. You feel more confident. You're extroverted. You're more magnetic. Your skin clears up. People start to automatically think you're more attractive. Like you look like you're glowing. Yeah, this is your time, honey. This is when you're like hot and bothered and you're kind of looking at your partner a little bit differently than you were like a couple of weeks ago. Like this is that time. Essentially, this is when your body wants to reproduce. So this is that during that time, but you feel more energized, you feel more talkative, you're more socially connected. This is a great time to go out with friends, meet up with people, film. Like everything is just pumping for most women. It's just higher and it's doing well. You want to communicate more. You want to collaborate. You may want to do more visibility, things like that. This is probably when I like to do more interviews and more pitching and leadership. And like, I really feel like I'm in my zone during this time. So I definitely capitalize on this time. And I do do my best to like book meetings and batch my calls and host and record content if I can around this time period. This is a great time to make sales offers, do events, launch, like have tough conversations, like anything that you feel like is going to take a lot of emotions, you may want to do during this time when you're feeling the most confident, because you want to capitalize on all this testosterone is high. Let's do what we got to do, right? So movement wise, this is also a great time to do more strength training, HIIT training, group classes. You want to focus on anti-inflammatory foods, so like berries, leafy greens, almonds, carrots, veggies. Like this is also a great time to nurture yourself with those things. And this is just basically your peak window. This is when your body and your brain are optimized for being seen, being heard, feeling confident, feeling good. So those 2 weeks, basically follicular and ovulation, like I mentioned, that is when I'm doing majority of like my high intense work. I may be launching during this time. I like to do events during this time. I like to schedule as many sales calls during this time, pitch myself during this time, like do more work during this time, because I know that when I'm in my inner winter, menstrual phase, or I'm in this last phase, which is the luteal phase, I know my energy is a bit lower. And luteal phase is anywhere from day 18 to day 28 plus. So for some women, it could be like 10 days or it could be like a week. It really depends on like your cycle. But this is basically like your fall or your autumn time. This is when your hormones, like your progesterone rises and then it just drops. Your estrogen starts to drop. Your energy starts to get lower. This is when I notice that I tend to sleep like maybe 8 or 9 hours, when before, when I'm in follicular ovulation, I can get like 7, have 8 and I'm fine. So this is another good thing to track in terms of like your routines. Do you need more sleep on certain weeks and less on other weeks? And are you more irritable during certain times? I'm always more irritable. I'm always less focused. I'm more snappy during this time, and I'm very aware of it. So I do things to kind of stop myself from being in environments like that where I know my mood is going to swing very easily, because I'm basically PMSing. This is like with the quote unquote PMSing everyone talks about growing up, like, oh, she PMSing, blah, blah, blah. She's this and that. Yeah, this is during that time. This is the luteal phase. It is a real thing, and doesn't mean you have to just give into it, accept that you know, this time is going to suck, but do things to support yourself and your body. Like, you know, you're going to have cravings. Go ahead and have a little bit more chocolate during this time. That's typically what my husband will go out and be like, oh, I know she's on her little phase. Let me go get her something she wants. Like, this is the time when your strengths are basically like more refined tasks. So maybe like working on like ending projects or completing things or editing things. Think about what you would do in the fall and like Q4. This is kind of like that phase for you during the month's time frame. Like, you may want to avoid starting anything new, focus on like more maintenance things, admin, emails, cleaning up, following up with things, following up with people. Basically prepping for your inner winter all over again. Movement wise, Pilates is really good. You can still pretty much strength train. You can walk, yoga, you can do all those things, but you may want to do it on like a lower impact depending on where you're at strength wise. And you know your cycle best. Once you start tracking it and understanding how you feel and noting it, you'll be able to rearrange your days around this time. One thing I love to do is like actually put the phases from natural cycles. I take where it predicts and I put it into my Google Calendar, and I have it as a calendar where I can kind of just see where my energy is, and I like to work around that. So basically this phase is where you want to really take the time to prepare, wind down, not push yourself too much during this luteal phase. Be gentle with yourself and your expectations during this phase, and really maximize your follicular and ovulation phase to kind of offset the luteal and menstrual phase. But at the end of the day, we only can control what we have coming up so much. But as much as you can, especially if you're an entrepreneur, try to rework your work and even your social life around these phases to kind of optimize how you're already feeling in your body within yourself, and just make it things easier for yourself, right? Because there's a lot of part of our life where we're going through these phases, but then there is a part where you start to go through perimenopause and menopause. So I want to talk about that for a second to kind of break down what that looks like. So I'm talking to my 40 plus people here, and I can't believe that I am closer to 40 than I am to 20. That's insane. But hey, it is what it is. So I've been doing a lot of research on this. So what I've found is that you start to, obviously your cycle ends, usually for most women it ends around like 50, but perimenopause can start as young as like even your late 30s / early 40s. And it's influenced by like your hormonal rhythms, and it looks different for everybody. You may want to look at what happened for your mom and your grandma to kind of understand how yours will be. But perimenopause is typically between like 40 to like 45, and it's when your hormone levels start fluctuating and it can impact your energy, your mood, your sleep, your focus, your recovery, like all the things I've been talking about. And you probably still have your cycle, but it's maybe a little less regular, which is normal. And what you can do during this time is really track your mood, your energy, your cravings across 30-day stretches to help you figure out what your new rhythm is during this phase where you're going from like having a pretty succinct cycle to now about to lose it and like stop ovulating and stop being basically able to procreate, right? So this is where you want to basically use what you learned during your cycle, but think about the different phases based on how it's changed for you. So maybe like your inner winter is not as long, or your spring is shorter, or whatever it is. Like really track how your cycle has changed. And this is going to vary based on the person. So I don't want to give like general advice, but you want to just track through a 30-day cycle and see how your rhythms are going. And I think the natural cycle that really helps with that. And then also menopause. So this is typically for people 45 plus. Like I said, most women, it happens around like 50, between 50 to 55. But this is when your menstrual cycle completely ends, but your body still needs some type of rhythm and regulation, right? So your infradian rhythm no longer applies, which the infradian rhythm is the 4 cycles that I went through. It's your menstrual phases, but you still want to have a flow-based life. We're still feminine. We still want to have this flow-based life, but we're kind of hormonally more similar to a man now. Finally, we're kind of more on the regular clock. So you do want to take that into effect, but there are instances where you're more sensitive to stress, your blood sugar levels start to spike, and you don't want to overexert yourself. So instead, start tracking your energy highs and lows, tune into them, plan also around those more up days. So really you want to start tracking how your hormonal levels and how your energy starts to fluctuate, because you still are going to be on a different type of flow, I think, than like a man would be, because you are switching gears and you have different hormonal things going on, but you don't necessarily have those 4 phases of the cycle to kind of clearly define things for you. So it really comes down to tracking things for yourself and doing your own research and working with a doctor to make sure you're optimizing your productivity based on where you're at in your cycle of life and where you are in your monthly just rhythm. One way you could kind of think about it, which I thought was cool when I was doing the research, it was saying like menopause is essentially not the end of like your rhythm, but it's the beginning of a new one. And productivity in this season is like all about deeper alignment, less hustle, and more like intuitive scheduling. So you may want to think about it in line with the moon cycle, which I thought was really cool. And it kind of mimics the menstrual cycle. So the new moon is kind of equivalent to like the menstrual cycle, and that's best for like rest, reflection, and goal setting. And then there's the waxing moon, which is the follicular phase, like that spring phase where it's more about planning, learning, starting projects. The full moon is like ovulation, which is when it's really great to collaborate, you more creative, you're more visible, like we talked about, more social. The waning moon is more like the luteal time where it's more about completing things, decluttering, getting organized. So a really good way when you're in the menopause phase to line up the cycles that you once had with your new rhythms is to align it with the moon phases. So I'd never really been into someone who was like into all the different moon phases, but now that I'm learning more about it, I see how it really does like impact your life and the universe and like your behavior, if you believe in that. You know, look into it. It's kind of cool actually. But I hope this episode was helpful to help you understand like how your productivity can shift with your different cycles, depending on what stage you're at in as a woman. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments or what you've experienced when you've tried to cycle sync. For me, I think it's been really helpful, especially as an entrepreneur and a mom and a wife, like to understand where my hormones are, where my energy is, and to plan around those times and really maximize certain weeks in the month to offset for other weeks of the month where I just know I need more rest and I want to work with my body. I think when you're more in tune with your body and your tasks and your projects align with it, you're happier, you're more productive, and overall, you're really living more in alignment and you feel better energetically as well. So go ahead and start cycle syncing. I would definitely recommend having an app to start tracking your cycle, start noting different things. Like I said, I'll leave my link for natural cycles in the description because I really like how you can customize it. You can track things like your mood, your energy, and a bunch of different things you can track in the natural cycles app. And I really like how in tune it is for me as a person. So I'll leave that in the notes. And if you guys have other resources that you like to track, like the moon cycle, or to track your own cycle, or to track your own energy, leave those resources in the comments as well. I would love to see them. And as always, if you are interested in working with a coach to help you be more productive, get your habits together, and jumpstart wherever you're at and whatever projects you're working on, go ahead and book a time audit call with me. That's your first best step to learn more about how we can work better together, whether it's through a coaching session, through my starter kit, my time management mini course, or through my coaching program, Overwhelm to Organize. I would love to connect and hear more about what you have going on and how I can best support you to be more productive and live more peacefully and just achieve your goals and live your life full out. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share this with another woman who you know needs this information and would love to understand how they can cycle sync to basically just live more optimized and more intentional and live around their energy in a way that just fuels them and makes sense for their hormonal levels so that they are productive and they are working with their body. Once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye.